name is Griffin. We're going to be going over the advisor calendar and the dispatching calendar today. All right. So currently, I've got the service module open. What we're going to do is there's a couple ways of starting this process based on the advisor side of things. So let's talk about creating an invoice and putting it onto the advisor calendar. You can go directly from the calendar, or you can use a pre-existing invoice. I'll show you both methods. Let's say, for example, the customer invoice already exists if we want to go ahead and put it on the calendar. So what I'll go ahead and do is I'm going to choose any one of my already created invoices here. Let's say, maybe we'll do one of our quotes. And let's say we're expecting this customer to show up, and we'll work on his unit. We'll go ahead and take this one here. It's $194 estimate here. We've got, it looks like a winterized job. We've got some parts on here, our cause complaint correction. Basically, we're quoting the customer this, and we want to go ahead and get him scheduled to bring his unit in. To do that, let's see, we will go ahead and click on the advisor calendar shortcut here. It's a small icon, but if you click it, the system's going to take the appointment and it's going to drop it into the advisors column on the calendar. So let me show you again. If I get out of here and don't save it, every invoice has a default service advisor. You may have multiple service advisors in your shop or just one, but depending upon who is chosen here, that's where it's going to default it to. Now, of course, I can move the appointment, and let's say this particular advisor is busy, but Mr. Huffer here is still available at 1 o'clock when the customer is planning on coming in. We can drag and drop it there. And you'll see alternatively, there is an unassigned column here as well, but if you are directly assigning it to a specific advisor to monitor over, you would just drag it to that specific person, hit apply, or OK, or do both, and it'll get that saved on there. Now, I want to talk about navigating this calendar a little bit, and then we'll go into the other method of dropping appointments on here. So as you can see, we're actually just looking at Wednesday for our multiple advisors. Maybe you don't have 4 shop advisors, you just have the one. So I can take off everybody but Chris, he's our only shop advisor. So your calendar may look like this. We could take a look at his schedule for the week, for the month, including holidays, and then we can see some of the other scheduled information, like here's all these jobs that never got scheduled onto the calendar. So hopefully your list is not this long, but you'll find any new work order that gets started, we can find it on here ready to be scheduled. And then here's the start and the end time of each appointment. Here's some more advisor information, basically reviewing all the open invoices per advisor, how many are past due. The past due is calculating off of the date expected on the invoice. So on the top right of an invoice, there is a field that states when it's expected that this work is going to be finished. If that invoice is past due, that date, it'll show up in here, and then how many that advisor is closed. And you've got a bit of a date filter here. So if I wanted to see everything my advisor closed or was assigned in December of 2018, I can roll these dates back, hit reset all. So now I can see their open invoices as of those dates, how many are still past due and how many got closed. Okay. Obviously this data is, there's a lot in here. Hopefully you don't have this much open stuff from back in December. But being a demo environment, it's not being kind of consistently updated too frequently. However, back on our day view, let's say I wanted to see Mr. Huffer's week view, but I wanted to see it with these time slots to see when he's available, when I could potentially squeeze an appointment in. The problem with the week view is you don't see their lunch breaks or the gaps between appointments. You just see them all listed out. He's got one on Wednesday and one on Thursday. So instead, we could always look at the appointment here and go to our calendar view and actually click and drag. So if I click on the 19th and drag all the way to the 21st, now I can see his schedule Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Looks like he has a 1 o'clock on Thursday, a 1 o'clock today that we're expecting is going to take about 2 hours. And you can continue adding, or changing appointments. Now, if I double click on an appointment, I can make some changes to it. Now, if I hit yes, it's actually going to open up the repair order. But if I hit no, it allows me to modify this, where I can add maybe the customer stock number or other relevant information that might be, helpful to have on the calendar. I can change the color of the appointment. Maybe I have maybe my advisors use some sort of color coding system to know where the invoice is at. But obviously, the invoice status can kind of identify that a bit more easily. But I've saved my appointment. There it is. Again, I can always reschedule it. Maybe a customer calls in and says they can't make their 1 o'clock today. Are we available at 3? I can always just move that over, hit OK, and that'll be our date in. And if you look here on the system, you know, it will modify our date in depending upon where we schedule that appointment. Okay. Same thing with that date time promised or date time expected. Like I mentioned, this invoice is going to be showing past due because this was dated back in 12/18/2018. So it's already, you know, past due. So this was us manipulating and adding to the advisor calendar an existing appointment. Well, let's say I wanted to add an appointment that doesn't exist yet. Well, you can do that directly onto the advisor calendar by saying Tools, Advisor Calendar. Let's see here. So now, same process. Let's say it's Wednesday as the customer is trying to bring in their unit. I can click on the day of Wednesday, come down here to 1 p.m. if that's their, you know, planned time, double click on that spot, and it's going to ask me, do I want to create a new appointment? If I say yes, it's actually going to generate a new appointment invoice for me. I would go in and have the customer on the phone, ask for their last name, and then maybe collect some of the information that they are looking to have us work on. So if it's a Winterize job, maybe same thing with the first invoice, we'll pick our repair code of winterization. Probably spelled it wrong there. Let's try that. There we go. So we'll use our winterization job line here, added our cause complaint correction, the time, and I've got a quote out here. So now I don't have to click on this, you know, appointment blurb because now I've got it already on here. I can extend it. You know, maybe we know this is going to take 2 hours, and it applies the same way. And you know, the calendar usage kind of functions both ways. So whether you want to add it directly from an existing invoice or add an invoice from scratch, both methods work. And I like this week view. So let's say our advisor is looking at the week in advance. He can go to the 18th to the 22nd. You can see his entire schedule of who's coming out. Some dealerships I've seen will even print something out like this, you know, and post it in the shop. However, as soon as one of those appointments changes or reschedules, that print option is obviously obsolete. So just keep that in mind, but it's always nice. We've even seen some shop monitors where they'll have the system up on a screen and they'll constantly have the advisor calendar up, you know, and making sure that everything is up to date as possible. Okay, leaving stuff in unassigned. Let's say you had a batch of maybe 4 service advisors and they took the work at their leisure. You could leave everything in unassigned, but scheduled to the date and times that they, you know, the appointment was made. Then the advisors could grab those based on availability. But usually they're dispatched out by a manager, or a shop will just have 1 or 2 shop advisors and they just kind of divvy up the work evenly. You have some options here. You can see how many max ROs a certain advisor can have assigned to them and how many total they have, how many mechanic hours they can have billed out, what their efficiencies are. All these things can be found in the bottom sections here. If I click on Modify Employee Hours, I can see here everyone's start times, their lunches, and their end times, as well as the days that they're set to be available. So if you look here, Chris has it blocked out or blacked out everything prior to 7:40 or 8. I'm sorry, everything before 8 a.m. and then everything after 5 p.m. So that's based on the employee hours he has set. So if I filter in here for Huffer Chris, you can see these are his hours that he's here for work and the days that he is available to have work assigned to him. Next, you can look at the advisor settings, which is going to look at each advisor, what their default appointment duration is. Is it 1 hour or 2 hours? Their scheduling factor, which is based on the max amount of ROs they can have for each day. So maybe a guy whose default appointment, maybe he's our PDI specialist and each PDI takes about 2 hours. Well, if he can only have a max of 3 work orders a day, like let's say Deacon, every appointment will be 2 hours, and we're going to say that he can only have 3 a day. That way he doesn't get overloaded and overbook and have to push customers back off to the next day. So this is where you can make sure that if anyone is getting overbooked, if I go to drop an appointment on you know, Deacon there and he's already over the max, it's going to tell me that he already has his max ROs assigned and someone else is going to need to pick that work order up. We also have the ways to set your holidays. You just plug in the date, the name of the holiday, and that'll be on the calendar as a time off day. You can print the current screen, email an appointment, or check appointment history. So if I click on a particular appointment, you can see here on the 13th of February, since I do have an appointment scheduled that day, it's in bold, letting me know that there is at least one appointment scheduled. If I click on that and hit appointment history, it'll tell me when it was scheduled, by who, what changed, how, the reminders and all that. So it's good to know if someone's, you don't know who scheduled this and who told the customer 1 o'clock, you can start to dive into the history and see where that potentially could have came from. Furthermore, you can hit email appointment. It's going to email this appointment information to the customer's email address. So as long as they have their email set up in the CRM, it should generate a message that you can, go ahead and add some details to and then send it so that it'll punch out to that customer, so they know, maybe a 24-hour reminder letting them know that, hey, you do have an appointment scheduled on Wednesday. So again, we've gone over both ways of adding appointments to this advisor calendar, whether you're going to do it from an existing invoice that already is out there, otherwise you're creating the invoice from scratch from the calendar. Both methods get an appointment on there in the same fashion, so it's really up to your shop or, how you all want to manipulate it. Okay. Now, a couple of questions I usually get is, where are my, mechanic names? Where am I not seeing jobs? The advisor calendar is exclusively set up for those that are marked as a service advisor in employee information. And you don't see any job lines. You're always going to see the work order as a whole. So to get the individual job lines booked and dispatched out, that's of course going to be a separate calendar called our dispatching calendar. So this is really essentially a calendar specifically for the advisors to use to track, invoices incoming and outgoing, but not the individual work. So this is really just to make sure that all appointments are met each day. If a customer reschedules or doesn't make it, they can always call them and follow up to bump those appointments to the next day. But let's say, our advisors are using that side of it and they really want to get into the dispatching side of things. So let's see. If I go to, there's a couple ways of doing dispatching, just like the previous we saw. It's here in the dispatching section in 404, as well as within an invoice. So let's go ahead and show the calendar. You're going to see the similarities between the advisor calendar and the dispatching. And then from there, we'll go into actually dispatching work out. So as you can see, the format is very similar. We're viewing specific mechanics. Maybe my advisor or myself as a service advisor is only responsible for 3 technicians or 4 technicians. So I make sure to get them all visible so I can see what their today's, Tuesday's appointments are. And if you look, I can actually do the same click and drag, and it's going to show me everyone's Tuesday through Friday. So it gets a little bit smaller and harder to see with the actual text of the appointments, but it's a good way to actually check everyone's schedule at large to see and make sure everyone's booked up through the week, and it doesn't have any weird, extensions on or any weird time gaps where they're not working on anything. So same way as the other calendar, we have a week view, month view. We have a scheduled tab. This is work that is all sitting out there with a start and end time that needs to be scheduled. So basically, these are work orders out there with open work that basically is sitting out there open on the calendar somewhere that we need to get dispatched out. The need to schedule is actually similar to the schedule tab, except in the schedule tab, we're just seeing invoices as a whole. Here, you're going to be seeing, everything going back. If you look, some stuff's in here from 2012. Well, those are probably jobs that never at one point got scheduled. And if you look ahead, we just looked at the date time stuff that we had. If we scroll back, actually, we can probably find that winterization work that we were scheduling earlier. But with as much data as in here, it's hard in a demo environment. But hopefully your schedule list wouldn't be this long. It's just the active work, but no one has been maintaining this, so it gets rather busy. But all this is really intended to do is, let's say I have this job line and I want to go ahead and dispatch it out to one of my technicians. Let's say this check engine light is on. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and hit the dispatch button. It's going to put the single job line into the next available technician. So it's either going to look at any available who have a matching skill level. It doesn't look like there's any. First appointment matching department. So Mechanic Griff, he is available right now at 120, which is right now. So he is actually available to work on this, and go ahead and check out that engine light ASAP. So if I click on his name, it's going to dispatch that to him. So now if I go back to my day view, I don't have visible mechanic Griff because I have all these other ones. I need to unassign everyone that is not on my team. And you can have it set up so all the mechanics on the same team as yourself, team number being set in employee information, all are on the same team, in which case I will only see them visible at the start. So if I scroll over, there's that job that we just added. So mechanic Griff. Okay, if I think that's going to take longer, I can extend it out, decrease the time, check, make sure that they're clocking into it. And I can get to that invoice directly from clicking on it, hitting yes to open the invoice, and it's going to take me into it. Otherwise, if I hit no, it's going to take the actual appointment blurb and show me. Now we can colorize these or change however we want, the time, start time and end time, the description and all that. But for the most part, I prefer dispatching work out from the invoice itself, and I'll show you that in a minute as to why. But you can see if you had someone just constantly monitoring this need to schedule, they could do that process without ever having to go into an invoice because they can just see everything here. Next, you'll see all the technicians that are currently clocked in and the last time they clocked in. So some guys are running the clock for a little bit here for the last 2 years. This guy for 3. But again, you're going to just see every technician that's currently clocked into work, and if I need to clock them out at the end of the day. There is a clock out all mechanics button that I could use at the end of the day if I see someone still running time on an invoice, yet it's 6 p.m. and everyone has gone home. There is a mechanic status, which is showing each mechanic the job lines that they've done, how many hours they've clocked, and if they've hit an overtime alert, if there's parts waiting, so it's kind of a log of everything the technicians are doing, line by line, which job lines are in process or still out there. So this is kind of a good notebook to see everything they've been doing. And as you can see, since it's keeping everything, it gets rather busy. Now, as soon as an invoice cashes out and is gone, you won't see it in here, but this would be any outstanding work that is still open that the technicians are assigned to. So, it's hopefully not as busy as our demo environments here because it's, pretty unmaintained, but you should be able to use this as a current log to see what's out there and whether they're working on it, if they've hit their overtime limit, if they can't continue work because they're waiting on parts, etc. So. And you'll see down here at the bottom, the same functionality as we saw in the advisor calendar. We have every technician's employee hours, their skill levels. Skill levels being, if I have a technician set to a skill level, you'll see on the invoice, every job line can actually be assigned a skill level. So let's say I have work that's skill level 9, and I hit the dispatch button. Well, the dispatching screen is only going to show me mechanics who have a 9 or above skill level. So that would be this Thistleton, that would be Von Drasic, and this probably terminated technician that needs to be removed out of the service module. So everyone else is below a 9. They won't show up in the dispatching screen to have work dispatched to them because they're technically below the skill level required. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and jump out of this, and let's actually do a dispatch of work from within the invoice. Okay. To do that, we're going to go ahead and pull up a invoice here. I'm just going to find some work. It wouldn't be an appointment because once we're starting to dispatch out work, it's no longer appointment. We're actually going to use an open invoice. So let's go ahead and pick this. I'll pick something more recent. Let's go to this prep for delivery line. And I know that's usually a internal work, started from finance, but maybe I'm a PDI service advisor and I got to get my techs scheduled out to start this PDI work. To dispatch from within an invoice, we have the Schedule tab. So if I come over here, we can assign my skill level. So let's just rename this work so it's a bit easier to tell what it is. I'm going to call it a winterization. Okay, from here, I can assign a skill level, like I mentioned, so only certain technicians will show up as available to do this work based on their level. I'm going to leave that blank for now. It's not necessary. Estimated drop-off and pickup. Usually that's going to default to the dates that the invoice was started, but since You know, maybe it was dropped off today. I can hit today, and when is it expected for pickup? Well, I could put a final date, but the estimated pickup is really just trying to make sure that, you know, by this date, this is going to be the date expected or date time promised. You can leave it at the same value if you wanted to, or you could set it ahead, you know, say, hey, this customer is expecting to pick up by the 15th. That's fine. How many hours do we estimate this winterization to take? If I put 2, this is just going to change the amount of space that appointment takes up on the calendar. From here, you can set in a priority. So priority is actually just going to be a number that is displayed on the calendar blurb. So if I put a 10 here, it's not going to put it ahead of any other appointments. It's not going to change the color or anything like that. It's purely going to just have a number tied to it, and we can see priority based on, you know, you know, and it's up to your dealership to define, you know, what order the priority is. Is priority 10 the highest? Is priority 1 the highest? It does, you know, whatever you choose, you know, when you select that there, it's going to put it on the appointment. So we'll put a 5 so you can see that. So now we have a few options for actually scheduling this work. We can hit schedule, and if you see that when I do that, here's what's going to happen. It's going to put it into my unassigned column, and now I can click and drag it to all my mechanics. Well, Met Griff is busy up until 2 p.m., so we'll go ahead and give him maybe an hour's late lunch, and then we'll drop that into 3 o'clock. And you can see if I hit no here after double clicking on the invoice, it gives me the document number, which repair it is, you know, the current customer, and the lot location that it's at. Furthermore, if we actually went to the mechanic's application, they're going to actually find the work order that has now been assigned to them. So one of the things to keep in mind is, you know, when a technician gets assigned work, it becomes available in their mobile app to clock into. Until they've actually been dispatched work or their number has been put onto a job line, they won't show that invoice is available to clock into. So, you know, this process goes hand in hand with, you know, getting the right work dispatched to the correct technicians, and then they're always going to have invoices to select from when they go into their mobile app, if they are using that version of Infinity. So then I've got these appointments scheduled. I'll hit OK, and that's pretty much the process. Now, let's say I wanted to do the same thing for this second job line. We'll call this rotate tires. Not that we may be doing that, but we'll do the same thing. We'll leave the skill level blank. We'll do estimated drop-off today. We can say pick up today or pick up on the 15th, sure. How many estimated hours? Let's say 1 hour. No priority, I'm not concerned with that. But we have 2 other options here. We have a schedule all unscheduled jobs and schedule a group of jobs. So let's add a third line. I'll call this the inspect QC line. Same thing. I'm just going to leave it out there as a retail line. But now if you see in my schedule tab, if I go ahead and hit schedule all unscheduled jobs, it's going to take my bottom 2 and push those over, because we already finished number 1. It was just going to push these both as separate appointments on the calendar. But maybe I have the same technician doing the rotation and the inspect job. So do I really need 2 separate calendar appointments? If he's going to do both of these job lines together, essentially, I can hit schedule group of jobs, and the system's going to ask me which ones do I want to schedule. Let's go ahead and put these bottom 2. And now that I've hit schedule, you can see instead of 2 separate calendar blurbs, it just has repairs 2, 3. So it looks like Met Griff is booked up through the rest of the day, right? He's up until 5 p.m., which is his cutoff for the day. So if I click and drag and say, okay, let's look at the 20, let's go up to today. If I look from February over to tomorrow, on Wednesday, now I can see, okay, well, he should be available first thing in the morning, so I'll move this over to his first time slot. Let's give him 15 minutes to get in and get ready to start working. So we'll go ahead and start this at 8:15. Okay, hit apply, okay. And now we both have that information stamped into here. I can see the start date, the end date, who it's assigned to, if there's a bay location. The bay location can be assigned per mechanic in the employee information screen. How many hours we expect that to take, and if I click on job line 3, you can see this job's appointment is linked to job number 2. You must modify that job's appointment, and maybe we have to make changes or reschedule. So if you note, these start and dates and end dates will reschedule if I go into the tools the dispatching calendar, got mixed up there. Now, if I say, you know what, he's not able to do this work today, he got late getting back from lunch, so we're going to go ahead and bump this to Wednesday, let's say at 10 a.m. And since we can't do the inspection prior to that because that job wasn't finished, let's do the inspection right there afterward, and then he can go take his lunch as soon as he's finished. Okay, so there's quite a few, ways of going about this, whether you want to use the calendar first and then get to the invoicing screen or work your way backwards. Really depends on how you use it. And I get a lot of questions about using both. If you're trying to, do you need to use both the advisor calendar and the dispatching calendar? Not at all. Some dealerships will use one or the other. The dispatching, I would say, is the more feature packed because it allows you to track line by line, mechanic by mechanic, and make sure their work is getting assigned out appropriately and in an even manner. But the advisor calendar is obviously important too, making sure check-ins all get matched up, make sure someone's ready and available for a customer when they show up on the lot, and then whenever reschedules happen, that there's somebody available to take over that new time slot that the customer has moved their appointment to. So however you want to use either of these two calendars, either in tandem or, one or the other. I've even seen some shops start with one calendar, and then once they got familiar with it and they liked it, then they added in the secondary calendar. And whichever order you want to do it in, whether you want to start with dispatching and work your way back to using the service advisor calendar or vice versa, it should not matter. It's really just dependent upon how your shop is running, how you would like to keep track of these things, and then making the procedure changes to bring those to light. So other than that, those are the only really two big ways of using those calendars. There isn't really much reporting tied to them, unfortunately. You do have the print functionality, like I mentioned. So if it's worth it to you to, let's say, maybe Met Griff, I've got his week pre-scheduled out Monday through Friday. I can print it. Unfortunately, you are always seeing the unassigned column, so maybe you go to the week view instead, to give them what they're working on. So I can see at 1:20 today, I had one job line to work on, and then tomorrow I have one at 10 a.m. and then another at 12 p.m. So again, this all ties really well with the mobile app because every technician that is assigned to work, they're going to see it populate there. They're going to be able to clock into it, change their job status, do everything they need to do to get that work done. And then, of course, you'll review the hours as an advisor here and complete that job line when you're done. So let's say all this work was completed by this technician. We'll go ahead and mark them all completed. And then essentially this work order is probably done. This one's throwing me an error telling me that there's parts that must be relieved. That's fine. We'll go ahead and relieve this air filter. And then we'll come back over here and complete our job line. So now I have 3 completed job lines. I can probably cash out no problem here. It's going to say you have repair code pricing with no payable hours. So I hit no. I'm just going to let it go forward. And this should trigger our cash out routine. Since this is an internal work order, it's all internal pay, so no customer pay portion. So we'll just say $0 cash, maybe email our receipt to the customer letting them know, hey, the prep for delivery is done on your unit. But whatever, you need to do at least one receipt option. So, but aside from that, that's pretty much all there is to the calendars. A couple things to note. Some things you may not see when an invoice is cashed out. It will erase itself from the calendar, right, because the work is done. So if you think about it, in the efforts of keeping it clean, if I am looking at the advisor calendar, if I go back in December, anything that I still see as a bolded day tells me there's still an open invoice with that work order. So here's one, here's another. If I go back even further, November, it looks like it's clear in October. Well, the calendar goes back 3 months until it starts erasing appointments. So you've got about a 3-month window to continue reviewing old appointments that came in. So I would recommend prior to cash out, if you want like a stored record of everything that was scheduled from here, you can always take a picture or print out weekly what you have for the month. Maybe the month view is good just so you can see all appointments that were planned. But again, like I said, if any reschedules happen or things change, that printout becomes inaccurate. However, with appointments disappearing after a certain number of days, it's good to know because if I got everything done for November, you know, and we're in December, anything that was lingering there, we'd see it. Well, I can still see, if you look there, 2 lingering appointments, one on the 19th and one on the 20th. So that should be enough research, you know, I need to get into those invoices and start finding out, did the customer ever drop their unit off? Do we still have their unit? What's outstanding? What's causing me from not being able to cash out these invoices? So you're going to want to see a blank record going back, because that means you're caught up with everything and there's nothing outstanding. But otherwise, every bold that you see is a work order that never got cashed out, is what it is. Okay, so pretty helpful. You know, again, it's only as accurate as it was last updated. So if the people aren't keeping this up to date and they're wondering why it doesn't match with their actual live scheduling, that would probably be the case. So it is, a bit more manipulation, but again, I like these calendars because they're tied in with the work orders themselves. They clear themselves out when they're cashed out. So it's not like an Outlook calendar or something that you would have to go and manipulate and modify every time a sale happened or an invoice closed out. So now, again, for shop simplicity and making things easy, if you would like to transition to using both of those, I would recommend either or first. It's up to the shop and how you're running it. But if you do the advisor calendar, just stick with that for a couple of weeks, see how using it works out. If it makes sense or if it's just causing more of a headache, do away with it. But for the most part, it should be a good, accurate log of, hey, here's everyone showing up for deliveries today, or hey, here's everyone who is expecting their unit ready to go for vacation, and that can all be tracked and kind of maintained on this advisor calendar. The dispatching calendar, another, pretty useful one for the technicians, isn't necessary because they're probably just clocking in from their mobile apps if they are using mobile. But, the advantage is there. They can always have a reference to what they've been working on or see what their day looks like ahead of time. Because sometimes on the app, it's hard to tell how much you're scheduled for the day without going invoice by invoice. Whereas this screen makes it real easy to see, hey, if I'm looking at my mechanic here, and maybe he's either overwhelmed or, oh, no, this is our advisor calendar. Either he's overwhelmed or we need to distribute work off of his workload into another advisor. You can see it's very simple to just click and drag and add those to other employees there. One more thing, the dispatching calendar, like I mentioned, there's always going to be work on here. When a job is no longer on here, that means the job was marked completed. So if I go back and I see a bunch of work in December, that tells me that there's work that was uncompleted. And if you look right there, there's the not started document. So again, we're usually going to want to research those because I don't know why I would have in process or a work that was probably supposed to be started back on the 24th that never did. Okay. So really at this point, I'm kind of just revisiting and reviewing what we just talked about, but the work orders and the invoices themselves on the dispatching calendar with the individual job lines, using both of these tools can help get the shop on track with monitoring these things. Again, it may not make things easier. In fact, you're going to have to plug some information in here, but it does make researching what happened when a reschedule goes wrong or someone shows up unexpectedly. You can check the calendar and make sure, hey, we really didn't have anything scheduled. So, you've got some accountability on your end to track and make sure the service advisors are honoring the appointments that they promise out, rather than just scheduling someone at the earliest available time and then not being able to make the appointment. So definitely one of those tools that I could see being utilized by all dealerships, but not necessarily you having to use both. Some prefer just the mechanic side. Some like to use just the advisor side. I think a little bit of both is going to go a long way. It's just depending upon the trouble areas of the shop and where you're looking to, kind of help with the efficiency of scheduling. So that's pretty much all I've got on those two calendars. I try not to overcomplicate them. I feel like I did. But just trying to talk about each field. Once it's all set up and working, really just decide, do you want your service writers working directly out of the advisor calendar, or do you want them creating invoices and then dropping it back to the advisor calendar? Again, like I mentioned in the beginning, the ordering does not matter so much so as just the preference of the shop and how they like to key in their information. So I'll leave the floor open for a couple of questions. You can type your questions into the chat panel here. There's only a handful of time, and there's not too many people here. So what I'll probably do is just leave the floor open for the next 10, 15 minutes here. And if you've got questions, please feel free to announce them in the chat panel, and if it's relevant, and we can use it in the webinar, I'll go ahead and answer it. Otherwise, we can always reach out to you personally and go through it if it's a specific issue relating to your dealership. So I'm going to go ahead and put the phone down for a moment. We'll give about 10 minutes. I'll keep an eye on the chat if there's any additional questions you have in this process, or something about the current process you're doing now, and if this is going to help. Feel free to let me know. If I can answer it, I'd be happy to, and we'll kind of go from there. So thank you all for your time. If you have any questions, follow up. Like I said, there is going to be this video posted on our website in the near future with all the information in regards to getting this link downloaded so you guys can use this as a training reference in the future. All right. Again, thank you all for your time. Like I said, I'll leave this session open for about 10 or so minutes. We'll leave the chat panel up, so if you have any questions there, I'll be happy to type back and give you some feedback, or feel free to give us feedback. And I hope these webinars have been educational. Thank you for your time, everybody. Some of the questions here I see in regards to, looks like there is a storage fee or late fee automatically to a past due RO. Generally, that would probably be done through some sort of accounts receivable invoice outside of the work order. You know, if you're wanting to invoice them or send some sort of statement out. However, if you do want some sort of late fee that you can apply to the invoice to charge out, generally what we've done in the past is created some sort of fee, or, you know, I don't know what we could call it, maybe late fee or storage fee. Looks like we do have a storage number here. And basically you would bill that out as storage at, you know, $50 because we did store that, you know, item there. And you can bill this out directly on the ticket. If you don't have a part number set up for this, I would contact our support department, because it isn't just as easy as adding a part number for storage or late fee. Because what we want to do is we want to make sure the category is correct so that it bills to the right GLs. We don't want to just hit, you know, parts revenue for this. We probably want to hit some sort of storage fee or late fee GL account revenue, where that, you know, that appropriate amount of money would be assigned to. So if you were interested in getting something like that set up, reach out to our support department and they'll get the GLs created for you, or the correct GLs assigned, so that when you bill out storage on an invoice, it goes to the correct place and it doesn't just go into parts revenue. But that would be probably the easiest way to do it from within an invoice. Outside of an invoice, there's some accounting functionality that allows you to create an accounts receivable for a particular customer. So, but I think, Derek, if this answers your question, the best way would probably to be creating some sort of storage part in our system that bills out to the right GL accounts. So just reach out to our support staff and let them know what you're interested in getting created. Obviously, the part number can be whatever you want. It's just this category that's important. And by default, I don't think we have it looks like we do have a storage category in our demo system, but you may not have a storage category in your live environment. So definitely reach out and they can get you all the information you need to get that set up so that storage fee goes to the right place. Hope that makes sense, and let me know if that answers your question correctly. Lance here has a question. Can you incorporate canned jobs into repair job numbers? Are you referring to the canned jobs? I'm sorry, the repair codes, Lance? Because a repair code, think of it this way. A repair code is nice because if you look at how the repair codes are set up, repair code is always going to add something like a cause complaint correction. So if I pick this Winterize, it's going to add the complaint, the type, the cause correction and all that. But what it does not do is it doesn't add parts. So basically the question, I think, boils down to this, in two different paths. Do you need to create something that is constantly going to drop part numbers with the quantities that need to be relieved or sold and the pricing? Then the canned jobs would be the correct way to do that. If you're just interested in getting the correct complaint, cause, and correction and the billed hours out onto the invoice, I would create the job specifics as a repair code, because that way it'll always use that. Now, a canned job can have complaint, cause, correction, billing, parts, and a repair code tied to it. So the canned job kind of does it all. As a matter of fact, if I pick canned job and I search and I pick this AC install, you'll see that it added not only my parts, but it added a complaint. It can also add in pricing as well. And some canned jobs, you can even have the canned job add a repair code. So, and you may be asking, well, why would I use a repair code rather than a canned job? It seems like the canned job has way more information. That is true. The problem being, however, that you can't really search off of canned jobs. But if you look over here in the search invoices, you actually have the ability to search by certain repair codes, and in the reporting, you can do the same. So, I can pull a report on all my AC installations, and that report will filter based on the repair code chosen. If I create a canned job without a repair code, there's no way for me to search up only these AC jobs, because they're all lumped in with all the rest of the retail work. So the repair codes essentially give you some additional reporting functionality if you tie those to the individual job lines. So really the questions that you want to ask yourself is, are we adding do we want to set it up as a canned job with a repair code tied to it? that's the tidiest and probably the most, the best resource you're going to get, because not only will the CAN jobs standardize the parts pricing, the quantities and all that, but then you have the repair code backing it up so that you can always research all the technicians that did all that AC work through the year, see who is the most efficient, and then that'll help you reassign based on who's available. So to set up both of those items in the edit menu up here at the top, you've got edit repair codes. So let's just create one here as an example real quick before we close this out. So if I want to add a repair code, I can call it winterization. The category will be Winterize. Again, you don't need a category. I'm just trying to fill it all out. Winterize. Do we want to use RC pricing? That's that little checkbox here. So it'll force these billable or payable hours. That's fine. We'll go ahead and check that off. What's the description of the work? Please winterize the unit. How many billable hours are we going to say? This is going to bill out 3 hours. We're going to pay our tech 3 hours, or we can do flat bill amounts. We've got a default cause and correction, which is just, as you know, populate these two fields automatically. The default billing rate for this, so we always bill out $129 an hour for our winterized labor, and then which company and skill level this is applied to. So we'll just leave the company number blank and we'll say skill level 5. So now that that repair code's in there, I could search that up in the repair code section, type in Winterize, and it looks like this is the one that we just added. Nope, that's a different one, but you get the idea where you can create them. So there's probably just a bunch in here. Please winterize customer's unit. So same scenario. Now, let's say I wanted to create a CAN job doing something similar. In the edit menu, I come down here to CAN jobs. Let's, if you search up the existing ones, I can modify what's already there. Let's find a winterized CAN job, and then I'll add the repair code to it so you can see kind of the full picture. So if I click on winterization here, it's going to show me what is a template invoice. It looks like a real invoice, but this is just the CAN job itself. Here's the name of it, whether it's going to display in finance or not. Here's our complaint, cause correction, our billing, our pricing, and everything. And as you can see, you can attach that particular repair code to this work. So since we just created one, and I said, please winterize the customer's unit, I'll type that in there, and now all that is tied in. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Do you need to do both? You don't, but it's nice to kind of combine everything, because now every time I drop this winterized job, I have all this information that doesn't need to be typed in over and over and over again. And in the reporting, I could search up every single winterized job done, maybe monthly, maybe at the end of the year, to track all the mechanics that were doing it, what their efficiencies were, and maybe decide if I need to have some guys specialized in winterizing, or if maybe I need to pull guys off of winterized jobs because they're taking longer and their efficiency is lower in terms of what we're billing out. I hope that answered your question, Lance, and I apologize. I appreciate you, waiting for a response here. But hopefully that answers your question. And if you guys have any follow-up or anything, definitely let our support department know, and they should be able to, kind of help you get these set up. But it's pretty straightforward. You're just recreating an invoice, but as a template, and then every time you drop that CAN job, it'll create it for you. And real quick, to do that, you just click on here to a new job line, hit the CAN job button down right here, and then find that work. So we'll find it. It was the winterized job. So we'll scroll down, winterization here. And now it's going to add everything. It's going to add my cause complaint correction, my billing as I specified it, and the parts with their correct quantities. All right. I hope that answers your questions. We'll go ahead and close this webinar down.